Alright, so today what we're going to do is start our first value scale of our pen techniques page. So we are going to open up our sketchbook on our pen techniques page and we are going to start taping down our first value scale. So what I usually do is grab my masking tape and I put it on my clothes first in order to get rid of a little bit of the stickiness, and then I start applying it to my page. So once I rip it off, I am not going to rip off the paper. So I am going to apply it following that first line at the top. I will then grab more of that tape, apply it to my clothes again to remove a little bit of that stickiness, and apply it at the bottom of my value scale following that line. So applying the tape is going to make sure that we stay within those lines, and once we peel it off, it's going to create a very neat, clean line, and it's going to make our value scale looks very perfect, nice, and just very good. So as you can see, what we're going to be working on today is going to be our first value scale, and I'm showing you an example is going to be the hatching. So if we want to stay in the squares very well, we are going to also tape off our squares. So we're going to start with the darkest one, which is going to be the one to the right. So we're just going to grab smaller pieces of tape and outline that square as well. So I'm still going to put them on my clothes first and follow those lines, put the tape down, and then we will get started. So the technique we're going to be using right now is going to be called hatching. Hatching is a drawing technique that uses parallel lines to create shading and tone. So what we're going to do in this square is we're going to use parallel lines all going in the same direction. I'm using them diagonally. They can kind of sort of overlap a little bit in this section, and we are going to create our darkest tone possible. So this is going to be the pen is a media that does not really allow blending very well, so we cannot really smudge it, we cannot blend it nicely. So this is going to be one of those techniques that we can use for our future projects. So we are going to be just using those parallel lines, just putting them one next to each other, very, very close together, filling those gaps in. We can barely see the white of the paper, and just all going in one direction, keeping them parallel. Once you're working on this square, also keep in mind the pressure of the pen. If you're keeping the pen very light, it's going to not look very dark. If you push and put a little bit more pressure, the square is going to look darker. So make sure you push a little bit more, make it darker. Once you're done with the square, we are going to remove the tape on the sides of the square. Make sure you do it slowly so we don't rip the paper. Make sure you just go slow, do not lift it too hard, do not go fast, and just slowly pull that tape off. We can even reuse this tape, and it's going to be looking like a clean line. We're going to then apply that piece of tape on our left side, following that line. So here we're going to create our lightest value for our value scale. So what we're going to do in this square is still fill it in with lines going in the same exact direction as our darkest value. So same diagonals, going in the same direction, but we are going to spread them apart a lot more. So as you can see, we can see a lot more of the white paper through this. It's going to look a lot lighter. It's not going to be as dark, as black as our darker value. Once we're done, we're just going to peel that tape off, and we are going to tape down around the middle square, so the one in the center. So we are going to be working on our middle value. So for this one, we are going to try to draw lines still going the same direction, still going parallel, as close as we possibly can without having them touch each other, trying our best to not have them touch each other. So if they slightly touch each other, it is going to be okay, but try your best to just keep them parallel, not touching, until it looks something sort of like this one. Once we're done, we are going to peel off that tape, and we are going to tape down the one between this one and the very, very dark one. Keep in mind, you can always reuse that same piece of tape, so once you've peeled it off, you can just grab it and repurpose it for the next square. So for this square, we are going to do lines closer than the one we just created, but not as close as the darkest one, where we are technically basically barely able to see the paper underneath. So keep the lines as close as you can. They might definitely overlap a little bit on this one, but they are not going to be overlapping as much as for the darkest one that we created. So as you can see, they're very close, but they're not as close as the other one. So we are going to then peel off the tape, and you are going to see the difference between all of those three squares. So the middle one is definitely lighter than the one we just created, which is also lighter than the darkest one. So you will see the different values that will keep increasing in darkness. So the last one we're going to do is the second square. So we are going to start by taping it down and getting it ready for drawing. So in this square, we are going to fill it up with lines that are definitely closer than our first one, but definitely a lot more separate than our third one. So we will still have a lot of white space. We will still be able to see the paper, but we will have the lines definitely closer than our first one, where we can see the difference between the two. Once we're done and we peel off the tape, we are going to be able to see the difference in value in all 5 of our squares. So the last thing we're going to have to do is peel off the tape completely from our entire value scale. So from the side, from the top, from the bottom, and we will have clean edges and a perfect value scale.